Botox does so much heavy lifting. People used to tell me that before I had to stop. They were like, well, you have glass skin because you have Botox. And I would get defensive because I also had really bad acne. I went in, I had the implants removed, awake, for anybody wondering, because people always ask me questions too. They'll DM me and be like, what? Because I have answered a lot of Q&As on Instagram saying that I did get them out and that I did it awake. It wasn't terrible. Somebody asked more about MCAS and symptoms and diagnosis. And then she also wanted to know about salmon sperm facial injections, which sums up why I love my audience. We have range, right? I think that something happens on social media, and that's that people conflate surgery and skincare. They're two completely different things. When your lifestyle becomes a lifestyle of rest, that is really easy to maintain. Changing habits is hard to do because there's a lot of friction there. If you're not working out, if you're not eating healthy, it's really easy to continue to do that because it's frictionless. At 28 years old in 2014, living in LA, sobriety was the worst possible thing that I could have ever thought would happen to me. I really thought that it was going to be the end of my life. It's crazy. I can't believe it's been 11 years. Do I think I'll change my mind about wanting kids? Not today. Not today. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. Woo! Ashley's back, everybody.
Hey, everyone.
Can I tell them your news?
Oh my gosh, really? Sure,
I don't have
go
to.
ahead.
No, I don't have to.
No, you can. I mean, that is whatever.
Ashley is with child.
Yay! Having a little girl.
We're so excited for her. So that's exciting. And I haven't been in the studio in 2 months, full disclosure for anybody listening who cares. So I feel like I haven't seen Ashley in forever. I haven't been in studio on the microphone in forever. I feel like I've forgotten how to do this. So we're going to just see where this goes.
You're doing great so far.
Thank you. Also, I'm really self-conscious right now. I don't know if you saw, Ashley, but I have this thing on my forehead.
You look fine, girl.
Well, I had something removed from my forehead yesterday.
What?
And it was like this growth that I had. It was just like a little red bump that continued growing. And so I went to my dermatologist because I didn't know what the heck it was. And he said that he had to cut it off and biopsy it.
Oh,
And he was like, I don't think it's really anything to be worried about, but we want to make sure that it's not cancer. And I was like, cancer?
Wow.
And I said, what kind of cancer are we talking here? And he said basal cell, which is not like terrible, but you do have to have surgery because you have to have like the margins cut out, I think, or something like that. I could be getting this wrong. Sorry, anybody who has been through that. But anyway, so I have this like hole on my forehead. And he called me today and he was like, I have great news for you. And I said, what's the news? And he said, the thing that I cut off wasn't cancer. It's an age spot.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, this is not good news.
That's the worst thing to tell you.
It is the absolute worst thing that you could possibly say to me. I was like, I'm sorry, what? He's like, yeah, it's an age spot. It's called a like something keratosis. And I was like, that red bump was an age spot? He said yes. And I was like, well, that just ruined my day.
Oh,
Goodbye.
no.
Anyway, so if you're watching on YouTube and you see, it still has like the pen on it, you know, like when they mark you. But yeah, anyway. So that's the latest with me in case anybody was wondering. But anyway, I thought that today I would rewind a little bit because I do have a lot of new listeners. I have a lot of new followers on social. And as much as I'm sure a fair amount of people listening have heard enough about this, something that I realized I've never talked about in regards to what happened with the whole Botox thing was like what actually happened. So I've referenced nonstop, incessantly, I know, that, you know, I had this adverse reaction to Botox and that all of these things have happened subsequently as a result of that. And it also changed the trajectory of my life in a lot of ways, which is kind of shocking. And I can get into all of those. But I realized I've never actually shared on the podcast like the sequence of events and what happened physically and how I realized that it was from the Botox. And day in, day out, I get questions from people on social, whether I'm doing Q&As or on my videos. Obviously, my face taping videos have been disseminated far and wide, I'll put it that way, around the internet. And I get tons of questions on those about why did you stop Botox and what was your reaction? And so I thought that I would just kind of share here what happened. And it's not going to be the whole episode. So for anybody listening who has heard it on my Patreon, which is the one place that I did share kind of the nitty gritty, then you can just fast forward a little bit. I'm just going to kind of touch on it briefly. But basically what happened was I had been getting Botox with no issues for, I want to say 9 or 10 years. I think that I thought of the time that I got sober, which was 28 years old. I'm now 39, as the time that I first got Botox, which now in retrospect was not accurate because I was in a treatment environment for a year. I was in rehab for 6 months and then sober living for 6 months. And then after that, I don't know, at some point I went to a dermatologist for like a skin check and they were like, do you want to get those wrinkles in your forehead? So I was maybe 29 or 30, which is still very young. But once you are treated, at least in my experience, and I think this is a pretty universal experience, you're kind of thrust into this world where now you're told that for maintenance, you need to get Botox every 3 or 4 months. I know that some people do every 6 or 8 or even 9, but it's one of those things where like once you get it, you have to continually getting it. You don't have to, but if you want to continue, getting the treatment and having the results from that, it does wear off. And so you're kind of like in this endless cycle. So I started that, I don't know, conservatively say like 30. So I went in for my regular treatment and I felt fine that day. It was a Wednesday. And then on Thursday morning, the next day, I remember I woke up and I felt weird in that my extremities felt really weak. So my legs and my arms felt kind of like jello. And I remember I had a doctor's appointment because I was supposed to be taking my mom to Paris, I think a few weeks later. And I had to see my doctor about something. And then I had a friend in town. And I remember being at the doctor being really, really, really anxious, like not mentally anxious, but like physiological anxiety, fight or flight. Like there was adrenaline coursing through my veins. And I had this weakness. But I didn't really think anything of it. I thought maybe it was hormonal because sometimes I get a little bit like anxious and kind of dizzy before my period. And then I went to meet my friend Daniela, who's been on the podcast a few times, who's a nurse practitioner. And we went to Saks, I believe it was, because I was supposed to be getting this award at a charity function. And I was getting an award for like being a sober, I don't remember exactly how they phrased it, but being like a sober member of the community who like does good things, that kind of thing. So I had to go get a dress for that. Anyway, I go to meet Daniela there, and at some point we were walking through shopping and all of a sudden everything just started going gray and the room was spinning. The floor felt like it was moving. And I remember sitting down in Fendi, just in case anybody needs a visual. We were in Fendi and I was like, holy shit, I'm going to pass out. Like, what is happening? And I still just didn't think, I did not make the connection, put it that way. I thought maybe it was blood sugar or something. And Daniela was like, we got to get some food in you. We went to Creation. I've told this before, maybe on this podcast or on Patreon, but we went to Creation off Beverly Drive or South Beverly Drive. And this girl came up to me who listened to the podcast or who followed me. And she was so sweet and so complimentary about the show and whatever. And I was like literally catatonic. I couldn't form a sentence. It was like this feeling that I had never felt before in my life. So everything happened really, really quickly. And somehow I got home and that was kind of the start of it. And I remember that day I did ask Daniela, do you think that this could have anything to do with the Botox? And she was like, no. And I just think, it's rare. So nobody was thinking that. And there are things that seem to correlate and then they end up not being related. And so I think she was just like, no, maybe it's like something else I can't remember. So anyway, the next few days continued the same way. And the main symptoms at that point were really, really, really bad vertigo, really, really, really bad anxiety, crawling out of my skin anxiety. And I had weakness in my arms and my legs, weakness in my neck. I had some issues like swallowing and some issues when I would try talking. It's called dysphonia, where it's like, it sounds like your voice is kind of high pitched. It felt like somebody was strangling me. So I decided to go to the neurologist. They did an MRI. They didn't see anything. They thought maybe it was in the migraine family. And I did ask that neurologist, could this be related to the Botox? At that point, Daniela was not in town anymore, but she did get on the phone with the neurologist because she's like that type of friend. And she's like, do you think we need to get the lot number? Could it have been bad Botox? He's like, no, it's not the Botox. So then I was like, well, maybe it's my hormones. I went to an OBGYN, had my hormones run. Hormones were normal. At that point, my eyes had completely dried out. And to the point where like I couldn't open my eyes. I had to just lay there with compresses. It was really, really extreme. So I went to the ophthalmologist. He didn't see anything. He sent me to a rheumatologist to see if I had Sjogren's or another autoimmune thing. He didn't see anything. I was sent to infectious disease. I asked infectious disease, do you think it was the Botox, botulinum toxin, like the most deadly toxin in the world? Do you think that I could be having some kind of adverse reaction to this? No, definitely not. At that point, I remember when I went to infectious disease, I was like, if he doesn't like test me somehow for something, I'm going to drive myself to the ER. Like it was that bad. And I was a few weeks into it at that point. And my friends talked me out of going to the ER, my doctor friends, because they were like, they're not going to do anything for you. And I went back to neurology, who sent me back to infectious disease. Eventually, I ended up at psychiatry, who diagnosed me with major depressive disorder. And I've shared this before, I know. I've never been depressed ever. And that was kind of the sequence of events. And the whole time I had these debilitating symptoms. And I had like muscle spasms all over, but it was really like the vertigo, the anxiety, and the weakness, and the eyes. I mean, it was a lot of things, but those were really, really affecting my ability to function. I really couldn't function. And throughout that whole thing, I brought up the Botox to everybody that I saw, and nobody really acknowledged that it could be from that. And people did acknowledge, though, that maybe it had to do with my breast implants that I had at the time. And so I decided to get my implants taken out. I called my surgeon who would put them in, Dr. Cohen, shout out. We love him. He's been on the podcast. And he was like, this is terrible. Let's take the implants out and just see if when we remove that variable, if things improve. If you don't improve and you decide to put them back in, we can do that. If you do improve, great, but let's just get them out. But because I had so many neurological symptoms at that time, I was really scared to go under anesthesia. He didn't really want me to go under anesthesia. And I guess it's like normal for some people to have their implants taken out awake, which I know to so many people sounds like absolutely horrifying. I was really nervous, but he said that he does it pretty frequently, especially because oftentimes when people explant, they then want to either get a lift or do fat transfer. And he likes to wait, if he can, and see how the tissue contracts to see like what the shape and the size is going to be before he just goes in and like does a lift and puts fat in or exchanges the implant or whatever. So he's like, yeah, people do it all the time and they drive home after. And I was like, what? So that was in very beginning of November 2023. So that was August, September, October, November, like 3 months after the Botox thing. And I forgot to mention that the Botox company did say, like, if I started to get better around 3 months, then I would know that it was probably from the Botox. So I went in, I had the implants removed awake. For anybody wondering, because people always ask me questions too, they'll DM me and be like, what? Because I have answered a lot of Q&As on Instagram saying that I did get them out and that I did it awake. It wasn't terrible. In fact, at that time, it was kind of like the best day ever because I had been so miserable for so long, and they gave me Valium and they gave me laughing gas. So being at that point 10 years sober, now 9.5 years sober, somewhere around there. It had been a long time since I had felt anything like that. And after what I had gone through, we call that in recovery a free lapse. Not a relapse, a free lapse, because it was, medically appropriate. And it sounds barbaric, but it was not. So anyway, we removed the implants and God, this is getting long. I started getting better. And so January of 2024, I tried getting a little bit, November. November, end of November 2023. I got a little bit of Dysport and I had another reaction. So I was like, well, I don't know what that's about. Like, it didn't make sense to me. Why? If it was Botox poisoning, which I had this dermatologist at Mount Sinai tell me it was textbook Botox poisoning. He was the first person to say that. Why would it happen again? And I just thought, well, maybe it was still in my system. And so adding more toxin just like circulated it again, or I didn't really understand what was happening, but it was really, really, really hard to find answers. And so that is kind of the long, I tried to make it short, story of what happened. And that was, like I said, 2023 into the beginning of 2024. And that is why I had to totally change my approach to beauty, because up until that point, my beauty regimen, for lack of a better phrase, was skincare and Botox. And yes, I've had procedures over the years, but for my skin specifically. So I think that something happens on social media, and that's that people conflate surgery and skincare. They're two completely different things. So whenever I post videos about my skin, there's always inevitably commenters who like to point out that I had procedures. In fact, I had one, I think it was last week, where she was like, yeah, but you don't have wrinkles because you got a lip lift. And I'm like, a lip lift? 5 years? I did a lip lift 5 years ago. What does that have to do with wrinkles? And I understand, and not everybody is as into this stuff as I am and as a lot of my other followers are. But surgery and skincare are completely different. Dr. Amir Karam, I always reference him. He's a surgeon in San Diego, and he's amazing. He's been on the podcast, but we should have him back on. Ashley, file that away.
Got it.
Because he's great. And he always talks about the different markers of aging, and he talks about face shape and then your skin. So surgery addresses face shape, but it doesn't affect your quality of skin. Yes, you can have a facelift and maybe get a little bit smoother, but any surgeon will recommend maintaining with Botox if that's what somebody wants to do, because it doesn't affect wrinkles and it doesn't affect really texture to any degree. You might have some inhibition of your muscle movement after something like a brow lift or a facelift, but you're not supposed to. Surgeons don't want you to not be able to move your face after you have surgery. So when people bring up things like, oh, well, you had a brow lift. Yeah, I had a brow lift 7 years ago. I effing wish that made any kind of difference on things like wrinkles. So that is what really changed my approach, because Botox does so much heavy lifting. And people used to tell me that before I had to stop. And they were like, well, you have glass skin because you have Botox. And I would get defensive because I also had really bad acne. So when I talk about skincare, I'm thinking clear skin, free of acne and breakouts. I'm thinking about pores, overall skin quality, texture, things like that. But I mean, there is a grain of truth in that. But when I stopped having Botox and the effect of Botox, I was like, oh yeah, we got to be hitting this from a few different angles, hence where the face tape came in and all of the things that I'm doing, gua sha, facial cupping, facial massage, skincare. I did a post on Instagram in case you guys missed it, and it was my morning routine, timestamped. Ashley, did you see that?
No, I didn't.
Excuse me?
Sorry.
Get on your phone right now. No, I'm kidding. Because I think that there's a misconception that this stuff is very time consuming, and that it not only consumes all of my time, but all of my mental space as well, which it really doesn't. And I showed on this morning routine thing that my morning routine actually takes 20 minutes, give or take, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on how much time I have and what I feel like doing. But lately, You guys can go on my Instagram and look at this, but it's like I wake up, I'll take off my tape if I tape at night. And the tape itself only takes a few minutes because what I do is I pre-cut strips so that when I go to tape at night, I don't have to like sit there with my scissors cutting the shapes and everything. So it only takes a couple minutes to put it on. And then it takes like not even a minute to take it off. And then I like to do a little gua sha. So I do some oil on my face. I'll gua sha. I don't really know what I'm doing with the gua sha, but I've watched enough tutorials to know that, I'm not doing anything bad. And I do notice a difference in like the puffiness, especially in my mid and lower face when I do it. And my eyes, depending on if I target that area. But I like to do that. And then I've been really into facial cupping. So I really don't know the science behind the facial cupping. I probably should have looked before I started talking about this, but I really do find that it helps to like plump my skin. So they're essentially these like suction cups, and I just kind of like drag them across my skin. My skin has oil on it, so it's not pulling the skin at all. And I feel like it just brings a lot of like blood to the surface. So I feel like it helps my circulation and just kind of like plumps things out. And then I'll wash my face, and that is that. Of course, I love red light, but that's pretty much it. And, I talked about this on Instagram as well. I wish that I was that person that was like doing monthly microneedling and doing lasers and doing like all of these treatments. I look at like an Amy Chang, also a friend of the podcast, who we need to have her back on, Ashley.
Okay, Amy, got it.
She and I are always like, you are my beauty kindred spirit. Because we both, love this stuff. But I feel like she's maybe not always doing treatments, but she does a lot of R&D, put it that way. And I'm just not doing that. But that is kind of like what brought me to where I am now with all of the beauty stuff. And that's why you guys are seeing probably so many of my tape videos and so many people reacting to my tape videos. The consensus pretty much across the medical community is that it's like bullshit quackery. And I get it. I would have thought the same thing. I did think the same thing. I remember seeing all these like face yoga accounts, and even like Donna Omari, who Noise Skincare, for those of you who remember her, she passed away last year, sadly, really, really sad, devastating for her family and her community. She was on my podcast, I think, in 2022, and she was like a trailblazer in the natural modality space. So she was an esthetician. She did a lot of gua sha. Her stone that she gave me after she came on my podcast is the stone that I use. She sent me reflexology tools. She sent me tape, and I was like, love the stone, not sure about the taping situation. And now I actually go back to her videos and watch them because she really knew her stuff, and she was kind of like ahead of the curve when it came to that. Although these modalities are not anything new, especially like if you go to Russia, I think is where Olga from Natural Face Bible learned, and I'm not sure where Donna learned, but it's been around for a long time. I mean, people have been doing stuff long before Botox. So I understand there's no quote unquote science behind it, and I understand why people have the reaction that they have to it. And, that's just part of it, I guess. That's just part of putting myself out there. Oh, I did see, I've been getting a lot of comments from people that are like, yeah, you stopped getting Botox so that you could get a facelift. And I'm like, first of all, thank you, because you're saying that my face looked lifted. All I see in my video from 2023, all I see in my videos from 2023 to now is how my face has fallen because, again, like Botox was doing so much of that heavy lifting, especially in my lower face, and things have changed. And I've talked about this. Like I have muscles that came back from not having Botox atrophy them, and that changed the shape of things. But I'm like, I wish. I wish. I'm like, another part of this is that because we took out the implants when I was awake, I still have the capsules in my body, and I'm still dealing with all of these health issues. And my immunologist and myself are wondering if the capsules in there, which is what your body forms around an implant when you have them, is causing my immune system to be like haywire right now because we don't know why I'm like not really getting better this far in. And to have the capsules removed would require me to go under anesthesia. And I'm just like, it scares me. It really, really scares me. And I used to have such a blasé attitude around doing procedures and going under and, you know, recovery and all of that. I think that part of that is living in LA. I mean, there is definitely an attitude here of nonchalance when it comes to any kind of procedure, whether it's minimally invasive like Botox and filler or surgery. It's really, really normalized here. And I think it's really normalized in certain communities as well, public-facing people. And I'm trying to think right now, like if I know anybody who hasn't really had any work done. I don't think that I can think of anybody. So yeah, so that is something that I'm kind of grappling with right now because I feel like on the one hand, getting those capsules removed could potentially clear up some of the health stuff that I'm dealing with now still, but I'm also scared to go under. So it's like a double-edged sword and scared of the medication. And you guys know from my episode that I did about a month ago about the MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, and histamine intolerance stuff, which are two different things, but I'm grouping them together. It's a tricky thing to deal with because somebody's triggers can be literally anything. You know, my triggers seem to be temperature changes, which is like horrible. Certain foods, certain chemicals, certain smells. So I don't know if smells fall into chemicals because it's probably whatever it is that I'm like inhaling, certain products. And it's just, there's no rhyme or reason. And people that have MCAS specifically have to be really, really careful about surgery because of the trauma on the body and also the medications that they give you to go under anesthesia and then medication that they give you when you are recovering. So there's a lot there to consider. Okay, so anyway, moving on. People did want to hear more about like MCAS symptoms, but I'm going to stop, I think, with the health medical history that I'm giving you guys here. But a lot of people did ask me, would I do Botox again, knowing what I know now? I mean, maybe. Like, would I personally do it again? I don't know. It's like not even something that I can think about right now. But knowing the information that I know now, I think, and I've talked about this before. Where did I just, on my episode with Valeria. I think that statistically it's still very safe. And I think that maybe more will be revealed, like another recovery saying, because I do know that more and more people are reacting to it, but whether it's the toxin itself or our immune systems, or it's just like an individual thing where our toxic threshold is reached. So while one person might be able to handle a lot of exposures to different things, somebody else like myself might not be able to. So it might just be like a very personal thing. All of that said, would I do it again? If I could go back in time, I would have done it very differently. But, you know, coulda, woulda, shoulda. Okay. I've been sharing that my house is going to be done in a month.
Yay.
Finally. Oh my God. Wow. Wait, Ashley, I haven't seen you since the fires.
I know.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was crazy. And I talked about that in my last solo episode as well.
Yeah.
But I think I did share in that episode, or maybe I didn't, that when the fires were happening, I made a vow to myself that I was going to sell my house. I was like, I can't deal with this stress. It's too much, like the insurance and I was like, I just don't want to deal with it. It was so scary. Now that I see like my kitchen stone going in and
I saw that video. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I'm milking it. The stone and like the floors and everything is starting to come together, and I'm seeing like the fruits of our labor coming together and how reflective it is of me. I'm like, no, I can't sell it, you know, at least for now. I'm really, really excited for it to be done. And it is just like me, like that stone, Ashley. I was like, that's me if I was a stone.
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
Like,
I love it.
Yeah. And it's so cool to be able to, do this for myself at this stage of my life. And so, yeah, it's just something that I want to enjoy, at least for a little bit. We did make an offer on a house in Miami. But they came back and they actually accepted our offer. And we were like, oh, shit.
This is real.
Yeah, we definitely want to get a place there, like not full time. But the specific house that we made an offer on, we were like, it needs a lot of renovation. And could we do it? Yeah. But we decided to wait. Okay, so the house is going on. My health issues, I will just say, like, since I've been on the right medication for the MCAS stuff, knock on wood, has been so much better. And people have asked for a specific episode dedicated to that with a specialist. And it's surprising. I think so many people are dealing with it more and more. So that's something, Ashley.
Got it. Noted.
That's something that I think we'll do so that people who want to hear about it can listen to it, and people who are over this whole saga don't have to listen to it. And what else? When this comes out, so this comes out on the 19th.
We think.
On the 22nd, I'll be 11 years sober.
Yay. Congratulations.
Yeah. So that's a win. And that was another thing that people ask about a lot, again, because I think I have a lot of new listeners and a lot of new followers. And I don't think that I've done an episode on my whole story since maybe like my first year of the podcast.
Oh, wow.
And it's a long one. It's a doozy. But it's definitely something that I could do an episode on if you guys want to hear about it. And it doesn't have to be all like, war stories, although I know that that's what we call them in recovery. That's what people kind of like to hear.
I think it's inspirational, though, especially at the top of the year and people are like trying to revamp their life in some way, maybe. So I think it's a great time to share your story again.
All right. Do you have an hour? No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I agree. And I also think that sobriety, or at least not drinking, is like more and more popular every single year that passes. I say this a lot when I'm interviewed, but when I got sober, 2014, sobriety and like sober, curious, and all of these things were not, it was not in the zeitgeist at all whatsoever. Like, I didn't know where to look. But also, there weren't really any sober women that were like kind of young or like young professional that I saw, at least publicly, that I could look up to. And now I know they do exist, and there are communities and fellowships and amazing places where there are people from all walks of life and people who have been through it. But yeah, at 28 years old in 2014, living in LA, sobriety was like the worst possible thing that I could have ever thought would happen to me. And, I've said this a lot as well. I really thought that it was going to be the end of my life. And it's crazy. I can't believe it's been 11 years. Like, shocking to me. I don't know where the time has gone. It's a big milestone for me, although I feel like 10 years was definitely more of a milestone. And then now I'm kind of in that phase where it's like 15 is kind of big, 20 is kind of big. Obviously, every year, every day, sober is a gift. Gotta say that. But as far as milestones, 11 is like, although I feel like 11 is a lucky number, like angel number, right?
Yeah, 1111.
Yeah. So somebody asked more about MCAS and symptoms and diagnosis. And then she also wanted to know about salmon sperm facial injections, which sums up why I love my audience and my listeners. We have range, right? So I did an episode in January about MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, but I don't think that I really got into the symptoms. I will say that they very much parallel with the symptoms that I had after I had Botox. The first time that I had the Botox reaction, I mean, it was very, 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 very intense, like debilitating, couldn't function. And there were a lot of different symptoms. But when I do get mast cell flares, which is what has been happening to me, It feels very reminiscent in that the main symptoms are vertigo, brain fog, itching all over. I get rashes sometimes, itching inside my ears, dry eyes, ear ringing. Mast cells, which I explained in the last episode, are kind of like a precursor to histamine. Like they're kind of like your immune system guards, and they release histamine when they think that there's a threat. And the problem with any kind of mast cell dysfunction is that they perceive everything as a threat. So some people who have it really badly are like literally allergic to life, and they have to like take an EpiPen with them if they go outside. And that's terrifying. Actually, I was sick last week, and the worst part of my sickness was not the virus itself. It was that I was allergic to the virus. It was the craziest thing. Like, my tongue swelled, my eyes were swollen and itching and red. It was like this itching that made me want to end it all. Like, it was like nothing I'd ever experienced. It was so, so crazy. So yeah, so the symptoms for me are like very much neurological, nervous system, and a little bit of dermatology thrown in there in the mix, but they can be different for anybody. So some people have like really heavy gastrointestinal symptoms. Like, there's mast cells throughout your entire body. And I think to get an official diagnosis, it has to involve multiple symptoms. So like if you're just having skin reactions, that's more of like a traditional allergy, I think. Whereas like people with MCAS will have skin, gut, brain, skeletal. I have joint pain in my hands when I have flares, things like that. So getting a diagnosis, I talked about that in my episode in January, but I have to say that I'm on the right medications right now, it seems, and I'm very excited because for the past few weeks, except for when I was sick last week, I've been able to work out. I have not been able to work out since the Botox thing happened, and I used to love working out. Like, yes, I've done sporadic workouts here and there, but something that would happen to me always is that if I worked out, then the next day I was symptomatic again, and it didn't make any sense to me. So I was able to play tennis last spring. It's kind of weird because I kind of got better from like last winter until this September, and then something happened this September that just made everything like way, way, way worse, and trying to figure out what that is. But yeah, I'm back to working out. And so now when people ask, what's my diet and workout routine? I have an answer.
Yes.
Are you excited?
Sorry, I got really excited with that.
Ready, everybody? Here's my exact breakdown. I'm laughing at myself because it's like, wow, she works out once. I talked in the last episode that I did, the solo in January, about what my exact diet is. I'm eating low histamine for the time being. So yeah, you can go back to that episode and hear those details there. For the sake of time, I won't get into it here, but it's a lot of like oats and berries and chicken, and I'm incorporating red meat into my diet again, rice, broccoli, zucchini, things that are safe foods for me, sweet potato chips. Hot tip. I don't know where else they sell them besides Erewhon, but there's this brand, Sweet Potato Awesome. They might need to work on the name a little bit, but they make dehydrated sweet potato fry chips. I don't even know what you would call them, but they're just in coconut oil and salt, and they're dehydrated. They look like fries, like sweet potato fries. The best snack ever. It's like buttery. It's so good. I digress. I do a lot of rice cakes. I do like olive oil and salt on the rice cake. I try to spruce things up however I can. But workout wise, I've been easing into things. So I'm doing like a 30-minute mat Pilates pretty much every day, and a lot of walking. So that's my big news. Yesterday I had 3 meetings, and I thought that they would be like, I don't know, 45 minutes. Like I thought that they were going to be quick. And so I went to the flats in Beverly Hills, and I was like, I'm going to take my meetings on my walk, which is what I like to do when I have calls or anything. I'm like, sorry, everybody, camera off. I'm getting my steps. Like, I think better when I'm moving. And also, nothing overstimulates me and burns me out more than sitting on Zoom. I hate it. Do you know that feeling that I'm talking about?
I do.
Oh my God. I can't do it. I can't sit there and like be in a room alone and look at a computer. I just can't. So anyway, the calls ended up being like quite long. And I was just walking like around this neighborhood in circles. And the people that were there working and stuff were probably like, what is this girl doing? I was exhausted by the end of it. But anyway, maybe I'll do some kind of like workout challenge with you guys.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, because I know that a lot of people struggle with getting consistent in their routine, myself included. And I don't want to jump the gun too much. And in fact, today when I was doing it this morning, I was like, I think I probably need to like scale back. My personality is like 0 to 100, no matter what. And I need to be more of like a low and slow, like, you know, that kind of girly. But I'm just not. That's so funny.
I've never heard of that. Low and slow.
Low and slow. Pace
like
myself, you know?
Yeah.
I got to pace myself because what happens always, like if I have an injury, I remember I had an ovarian cyst removed in 2016. This is back when I was doing BBG. That's like gnarly, okay? It was endoscopic, but they still poked 3 holes through my abdomen and then blew my stomach up, go in, they clamp your organs to the side. They cut the cyst off. They take it out of your belly button. I had a catheter. Like it was hardcore. And I was kind of in my like exercise addiction phase where I didn't realize it at the time, but I had a really hard time taking any days off. And I was back trying to work out and modify BBG workouts, maybe like not even a week later. And I remember like trying to like lunge and, you know, you use your core in pretty much everything. And it was so painful. And then of course, that set me back and then I couldn't. So that's like how I am. That's what I do. It's what I do when I'm sick. As soon as I have the first glimmer of feeling better, I'm like off to the races. And then I'm like, and then I get sick again. So yeah, so we don't want to do that. But maybe I can do some kind of like, well, girl, I don't know, March workout thing. What?
Okay, I thought you meant literally March, but I understand the month March. Sorry, pregnancy brain here.
Yeah, like a well girlies kind of March Madness thing.
I like that.
March Madness workout. You guys heard it here first. Hopefully my health allows for this, but it just feels so good to be able to move again. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate. You know, it's like when you stop working out for whatever reason, it's so hard to start again because whatever is the objects in motion stay in motion, objects at rest stay at rest. When your lifestyle becomes a lifestyle of rest or of not working out or whatever it is, that is really easy to maintain. It's like Isra Nasser. I can't remember if I'm pronouncing it right. She talked about friction, and changing habits is hard to do because there's a lot of friction there. So if you're not working out or if you're not eating healthy, it's really easy to continue to do that because it's frictionless. And the good news is the same thing goes for the other side of that coin. You know, if you're working out, if you're eating healthy, like that's going to beget more of that behavior because there's less friction to do that. So yeah, so maybe you guys can let me know if you're struggling with being consistent or adopting healthy habits and you want to do like the low and slow,
yes,
well, girl, March workout thing. I think we landed on something good here. Okay, I'm going to do a couple rapid fire because we really didn't get to any of the topics that I wanted to talk about today. How's my boyfriend with all of my health stuff and my beauty stuff? He's the most supportive. He loves the taping. He is like my biggest cheerleader. I know a lot of people are like, ugh, what does your partner or your boyfriend think? I'm like, he doesn't mind it. First of all, sometimes I put it on after he's already gone to bed because he usually falls asleep before me, and take it off in the morning. And when I don't do that, I mean, he's just not fazed. Like it literally does not faze him at all whatsoever. And then with my health stuff, he's super supportive. But something that I learned in recovery is to always act better than I feel. And I think that there's obviously nuance when it comes to this, because if you're sick, legitimately sick, you don't want to be putting on a front necessarily. But with my thing, it's kind of just like low grade and constant. And like he knows that I deal with shit on a daily basis and like don't always feel great, but I don't have to make it somebody else's problem necessarily. Like he's so supportive. And this is anybody, like my friends, my family. I just kind of learned in recovery that like I was such a burden on people before I got sober. And people were so worried about me all the time. And they were so burdened by me all of the time. And when I got sober, people who have walked this road before me, who have a lot more time sober than me, were like, you need to act better than you feel. And I do that at work. I do that in my relationships. I do that, like I said, my family relationships, my romantic relationships. And that's not to say that I don't have times where I'm like, God, I'm really struggling. Like, I really feel horrible today. And my friends, my family, my boyfriend, whoever, everybody is supportive. But I just don't make it like a constant kind of thing. Do I think I'll change my mind about wanting kids? Not today. Not today. But we can talk about those in my recovery focused episode. How to manage anxiety around world news and events. I heard a really good quote maybe yesterday, and somebody was talking and she said, just because the world is on fire doesn't mean that I have to be too. Or just because, I think it was maybe not fire, maybe too soon. Just because the world is like burning, I don't have to be too. Something along those lines. And I like that because, again, something that I really focus on in recovery. It's a great segue for my next solo is things that I can control, or are things that I can control and things that I can't control. And when it comes to world news, events, even the fires, that whole situation, it felt really, really overwhelming until I took a step back and looked at what are the things that I can control and how does me being like really heavily affected by this or being really, really reactive in certain ways, how does that help me at all? It doesn't. So that's kind of the attitude that I try to adopt when it comes to that. Just ended a 5-year not bad relationship, feeling gutted, having to start over at 30. SOS. 30, you have your whole life ahead of you. Congratulations. You're not in the wrong relationship anymore, and you're one step closer to finding the right relationship if that's what you want. But also enjoy being single. Like 30, I was single. Yeah. I didn't get married till I was 31, maybe 32. I don't know. 30 is so young, but I know like the existential thing that happens at 30 because I went through it too. And I felt like I had to freeze my eggs and I had to like figure everything out because I was about to be geriatric. And now I look back and I'm like, no, when you're 30, you're a baby. So you have so much time ahead of you. So, okay, I don't know how to end this. So we're just going to end it here. But let me know about the workout thing. And that's it. Love ya.